Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, well, it's ambiguous. We're aiming to pull together what you might call a definitive blueprint for mastery.
Yeah, and we're doing that by looking at a really surprisingly diverse stack of sources. It's quite the collection.
It really is. We've got everything from Roman orators like Quintilian, spiritual self-help thinkers like Norman Vincent Peale.
All the way to Stephen Covey's practical philosophy and even those, well, challenging financial sermons from Russell H. Conwell.
Exactly. So the goal here is to find that common thread, the secret sauce that seems to work across centuries and different fields.
And it's genuinely remarkable how consistent those requirements for, let's say, personal effectiveness and influence actually are. They haven't changed much over time.
It seems like whether you're aiming for dominance in the Roman Forum or, I don't know, building startup today.
The underlying structure, the core principles for achieving it, they seem almost identical. These texts, disparate as they seem, they really synthesize quite beautifully into a sort of map for anyone ambitious.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this blueprint then. It feels like a journey that starts, well, internally and then moves outward, doesn't it?
Definitely. We've sort of identified three main pillars that just keep emerging from all this material.
Right. So first up, we've got what we're calling the inner game. This is all about mindset, consciousness, how goal setting fundamentally shapes your reality.
Then pillar number 2 is the absolute necessity of the character ethic. This idea of foundational integrity being crucial for any kind of long-term influence or success.
And finally, the third pillar, the tools of influence. This is where we look at how you actually master the external arts, things like rhetoric and persuasion, to make an impact on the world. Okay, so the inner game. It seems like every single source, in one way or another, suggests that mastery has to begin with the mind.
Absolutely, and maybe the best place to start is with a definition of success itself. Earl Nightingale offers a really precise, operative definition.
What's that definition?
He says success is the man who is progressively realizing a worthy ideal.
Progressively realizing. So it's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. It shifts the focus right away. Success isn't just hitting a target or accumulating X amount of wealth. It's about the direction, the continuous state of progress towards something meaningful.
Nightingale also makes a pretty sharp observation about who actually qualifies as successful under this definition.
He does. He says successful people are those who are deliberately doing a predetermined job. They have a clear, known objective.
Okay, that makes sense. But then comes the kicker.
Right. The shocker is his estimate. He figures this only applies to about, what, 1 person out of 20?
1 out of 20. That's genuinely staggering when you think about it. Only 5% of people, according to him, actually know where they're going.
And the reason those few people with goals succeed, well, often it's painfully simple. They've actually mapped out their route.
He uses that analogy of a ship, doesn't it?
Yes. The ship leaving harbor. If it has a complete voyage mapped out, the captain, the crew, they all know the destination.
And statistically?
In, 9,999 times out of 10,000, that ship will arrive. The tiny fraction that fail. That's usually down to some completely unforeseen catastrophic event.
But the ships without a plan, the other 19 out of 20.
They're the ones that maybe don't even make it out of the harbor properly. They just drift aimlessly, pushed around by currents, winds, circumstances.
That's no direction.
No direction at all. And the sources are unanimous on this. Success isn't accidental. It's intentional. It comes from knowing your destination.
Okay, so it sounds almost easy to say thought dictates reality, but, what does that practically mean for someone who's facing real, immediate external pressures, like a stack of bills, a difficult boss?
That's precisely where looking at the historical agreement becomes so powerful. It's not some new age idea. Great thinkers have been saying this for millennia.
Like Marcus Aurelius.
Exactly. The Roman emperor, he put it so simply. A man's life is what his thoughts make of it. It's almost stark.
So if you're constantly dwelling on fear, worry, limitation,
your life will tend to reflect that fear, that worry, those limitations. But if your thoughts are consumed by purpose, by your goal,
then your life starts reflecting that purpose. It's a feedback loop.
A powerful one. And this ancient wisdom, it didn't just disappear. It found its way right into the foundations of modern psychology.
William James, right? The father of American psychology.
Yes. He made what he considered a profound discovery. Human beings can fundamentally alter their actual external lives simply by altering their internal attitudes of mind.
But he added a really important caveat, didn't he? Something that links back to Nightingale.
He did. It's crucial. You have to wish for the result exclusively. You can't just vaguely want success while also, just as strongly, wishing for 100 other incompatible things, like wanting success without the effort or wanting security above all else.
So it's about focused desire, that single-mindedness.
That focused desire is the engine. It's what activates what Dr. Norman Vincent Peale called the astonishing law of prosperity and success.
Peale really emphasized the binary nature of it, didn't he? Positive versus negative thinking.
Very much so. He saw it as one of the greatest laws in the universe, basically. Think in negative terms, you get negative results. Think in positive terms, you get positive results.
But crucially, this isn't just passive wishing, is it? It's not just sitting back and hoping.
Absolutely not. It's the active direction of that exclusive, focused desire that James talked about. It's work, mental work.
Which brings us back to how you actually do that work. How do you operationalize that kind of mental discipline? Nightingale offers that practical framework, the 30-day experiment.
Right, the 30-day test. This is where he grounds the idea in something concrete, something you can actually do, and he connects it to Sir Isaac Newton's third law.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. Success isn't free. It requires paying a price. And a huge part of that price is sustained, effortful thought control.
So what's the actual price in this experiment? What's the work involved?
The price is fully internalizing and acting on the understanding that we literally become what we think about most of the time.
And discipline for those 30 days.
It's intense. For 30 straight days, the rule is this. The instant a fearful, negative, or unproductive thought enters your mind, you stop it, dead in its tracks.
You don't just observe it, you actively stop it.
Actively stop it, and then immediately you replace it with a clear, vivid mental picture of your positive, worthwhile goal, visualizing it as already achieved.
Wow, that sounds simple on paper, but maintaining that kind of cognitive vigilance, the constant monitoring and redirecting for 30 consecutive days, that must be incredibly difficult.
Oh, it is, especially as you mentioned earlier, when our sort of natural default setting, as David Foster Wallace might put it in a different context, often leans towards cynicism, doubt, or just mental laziness.
It goes against the grain.
Completely. Nightingale himself admits it's generally easier for us humans to think negatively than positively. That's why the successful minority who practice this kind of control is so small.
So this 30-day experiment, it's not about passive affirmations whispered into the mirror.
Not at all. It's an active, conscious fight against that cognitive drift, against the negative default. It's about forcing your mind to break its old habits.
And the potential payoff.
The payoff is proving to yourself through direct experience that most of the limitations we feel, whether they're financial, career-related, whatever, are overwhelmingly self-imposed. And that the opportunities out there are, as Nightingale puts it, enormous beyond belief.
That idea of self-imposed limitations takes us really neatly into the more modern applications of mind control, like reframing perception. Tony Robbins talks a lot about this.
Yes, Robbins builds heavily on these principles. He explores how our perceptions aren't objective reality. They're shaped by our past experiences, our beliefs, our focus.
And he points out how the meaning we give an event can completely change depending on the context, right?
Exactly. His example of hearing footsteps is perfect. Alone in your house at night, terrifying, expecting a friend for dinner, totally benign, maybe even welcome.
The sound of footsteps is identical.
But the context, the frame you put around it changes everything. Your emotional response, your physical reaction, everything.
So this is where the technique of reframing comes in. Specifically, you mentioned context reframing. Can we unpack that a bit?
Definitely. Context reframing is a really powerful tool. It involves taking an event that seems, on the surface, negative or problematic.
Like losing a client, maybe.
Perfect example. So you take that seemingly negative event, and you actively work to view it through a different lens, a different context, that reveals hidden advantages or opportunities you hadn't seen before.
Can you walk us through how that might work? Let's stick with the canceled client project example. You've poured 6 months into it, and suddenly it's gone. The default frame is pretty bleak.
Right. The default negative frame is probably failure, all that time wasted, lost revenue, this is a disaster. That's the immediate, easy interpretation.
So how do you reframe the context?
You deliberately ask different questions like, in what context would this cancellation actually be a good thing? What hidden advantage does this create?
Okay. So what might a reframed view look like?
It might be something like, wow, this project cancellation, while initially painful, is actually a liberation. It unexpectedly frees up 6 months of my most focused, creative time I thought was locked up.
And on that freed up time allows for.
It allows me to finally pivot to that high-potential passion project I've been putting off, precisely because this client project was consuming all my bandwidth. This isn't just a cancellation, it's a forced, necessary pivot towards something potentially much better.
So crucially, you're not denying the initial frustration or the loss.
Not at all. You acknowledge the reality of the situation, but you actively choose the frame through which you view that reality. You change the meaning, and by changing the meaning, you change your emotional state and your subsequent actions.
You realize you're always in control of the frame, the interpretation, even when you can't control the external event itself.
That's the essence of it. It loops right back to that core self-responsibility that James and Nightingale were talking about. You choose your thoughts, you choose your focus, you choose the meaning. That's the inner game.
Okay, so if the inner game is about mastering your thoughts and choosing your focus, the next absolutely critical layer in this blueprint for mastery is ensuring your character is solid enough to support those ambitions.
Right. This is where Stephen Covey's work comes in so strongly, particularly his distinction between what he calls primary and secondary greatness.
It's such a vital distinction, especially today, in a world that often seems obsessed with quick fixes and surface-level charm.
So Covey argues that things like developing your personality, communication skills, positive thinking techniques, what he bundles together as the personality ethic.
These are all secondary traits. They're important, yes, but they're secondary. They're the icing on the cake, maybe some fancy decoration.
But they're not the cake itself.
Exactly. The cake, the substance, is primary greatness.
Yeah.
Your character, your integrity, humility, courage, sense of justice. And his core argument is that if your character, your primary greatness, is fundamentally flawed, if you're duplicitous, insincere, arrogant deep down,
then all those polished secondary techniques, all the communication skills and positive attitude displays, they eventually backfire. People sense the manipulation. They feel the lack of authenticity.
they see through it.
They see through it,
Right.
and trust evaporates. So in the long run, those techniques fail because they lack a solid foundation. Covey's core message here is powerful. Only basic goodness gives life to technique.
Without that primary greatness, the character.
The secondary greatness, the skills, become manipulative tools at best and utterly ineffective at worst.
He uses that wonderful analogy, almost earthy, about farming. You can't cram on a farm.
It's such a perfect metaphor for character development. You just cannot skip the seasons. You can't ignore planting in the spring, neglect the field all summer.
And then suddenly show up in the fall, work frantically for a week, and expect a bumper harvest.
Impossible. Farming requires patience, diligence, working with natural laws and systems over time. And Covey's point is that human behavior, human relationships, they are also natural systems governed by principles.
So if you sow seeds of, say, manipulation or shortcuts or insincerity in your relationships,
You will inevitably reap distrust, resentment, and ultimately failure in those relationships. You might get some short-term wins using clever personality ethic techniques. Maybe you charm someone initially.
but if the underlying character isn't sound, the relationship deteriorates.
Oh.
The harvest fails.
Precisely. You reap what you sow. It's inescapable in natural systems, whether agricultural or human.
This whole idea of long-term effectiveness versus short-term fixes sets up Covey's central principle for managing anything effectively,
Yeah.
the PPC balance.
Yes. The balance between P, production, the desired results, the golden eggs, and PC, production capability, the asset or resource that produces those results, the goose.
The goose and the golden eggs fable, a classic.
And the lesson is timeless. If you focus only on maximizing production, getting as many golden eggs as possible right now, and you neglect production capability, the health and well-being of the goose.
You kill the goose. You destroy the asset that produces the results you want.
Exactly. And this applies universally. Covey uses the example of physical assets, like a lawnmower. You can push it hard, get maximum P, lots of cut grass, without doing any maintenance, investing in PC.
Until it breaks down. And then the cost of replacing it is far higher than the cost of maintaining it would have been.
Right, but the principle is even more critical when we apply it to human assets, our health, our relationships, our skills.
We touched on marriage earlier. Focusing only on the golden eggs, the benefits you get from the relationship, while neglecting the relationship itself, the PC.
Failing to listen, not spending quality time, taking the other person for granted, that neglect deteriorates the production capability of the relationship. Eventually, there are no golden eggs left.
And think about applying this to yourself, to your own personal effectiveness. Your P might be completing tasks, hitting deadlines, being productive.
But if you consistently neglect your PC, your physical health, sleep, exercise, nutrition, your mental health, relaxation, learning, your spiritual well-being.
You burn out. Your ability to produce crashes. Short-term P gains lead to long-term PC destruction.
So true effectiveness, sustainable effectiveness, requires constantly balancing the two. You need the golden eggs, P, but you must invest in and nurture the goose, PC, that lays them. It's about maintaining that equilibrium.
Okay, so to maintain this balance, especially when things get tough or chaotic, Covey argues we need a stable, unchanging source of inner stability. He calls this our center.
Yes. He points out that many people center their lives on things that are inherently variable and unstable, like their spouse, their family, money, work, possessions, even pleasure.
And when you center your life on something changeable,
Your sense of security, your guidance, your inner compass, your wisdom, your perspective, and your power, your capacity to act, they all fluctuate wildly based on external conditions. You're on an emotional roller coaster dictated by things outside your control.
so what's the alternative? What's the ideal center?
Covey argues compellingly for a principle-centered life. Why? Because correct principles, things like fairness, integrity, honesty, human dignity, service, quality of the pace bat, they don't change. They're not dependent on other people's behavior or shifting circumstance.
They're like natural laws, universal and timeless.
Exactly. And being centered on unchanging principles provides that deep internal source of security, guidance, wisdom, and power, regardless of what's happening externally.
This connects really powerfully to Viktor Frankl's ideas, doesn't it? His experiences in the concentration camps led him to similar conclusions about finding meaning and responsibility.
It does. Frankl emphasized that we shouldn't ask what the meaning of our life is, but rather recognize that life is constantly questioning us. We answer life not through talk, but through action, through taking responsibility for our own lives and the specific tasks life sets for us.
So detecting our unique mission or purpose, rather than just inventing one based on whims.
Right, and having a principle-centered core allows you to hear and respond to those questions from life more effectively, more proactively, because you're not being constantly buffeted by external chaos.
The Stoic philosophers, writing centuries before Covey or Frankl, essentially built their entire philosophy around creating this kind of unshakable inner core, didn't they?
Absolutely. Seneca, for instance, argued that the truly happy life depends entirely on attaining what he called perfect reason. This perfect reason acts like an inner fortress, a citadel, keeping the soul calm and untroubled no matter what external fortune throws at it.
And how did they define the key to maintaining that inner calm? What was the ultimate good?
For the Stoics, the only true good was that which is honorable, or synonymous with virtue, living according to reason and nature. Everything else, wealth, health, reputation, even life itself, were considered indifference.
Not necessarily bad, but not intrinsically good either.
Exactly. They're external to your character, external to your virtue. So if your sole focus, your only definition of good, is maintaining your honorable character and acting virtuously,
Then external events, whether good fortune or bad fortune, literally cannot touch your core well-being. You've insulated yourself.
precisely. But the moment you define something external like wealth or status as intrinsically good, you've put yourself in the power of fortune. You've given away your inner stability.
And this whole conversation about character, principles, and wealth takes a really fascinating and maybe quite challenging turn when we bring in Russell H. Conwell.
Ah, yes, Thonwell in his incredibly famous, widely delivered lecture, Acres of Diamonds, late 19th century.
He presents a rather startling argument, especially for his time, claiming it's actually a Christian and godly duty for people, specifically in his context, Philadelphians, to honestly attain riches.
It's a perspective that definitely needs careful, impartial handling today because it pushes against a lot of modern sensibilities about wealth and poverty.
He wasn't just advocating raw greed, though, was he?
No, he was careful to frame it in terms of honest enterprise that serves the community's needs, but he was quite blunt about poverty, stating things like, it's all wrong to be poor anyhow.
He made a distinction, didn't he, between different kinds of poverty?
Yes, a crucial one for understanding his view. He said one should sympathize with and help God's poor, those who genuinely cannot help themselves due to physical or mental limitation.
But the implication for others.
The implication, which is certainly challenging, is that for most other able-bodied people, being poor is often the result of their own shortcomings, or perhaps the shortcomings of others around them, but not an inevitable state.
It's a very demanding viewpoint. And again, we need to stress we're just reporting on the ideas in the source, not endorsing them wholesale. But regardless of how one feels about his views on poverty.
His central, enduring metaphor, the acres of diamonds, is incredibly powerful and relevant to mastery.
Yes, let's focus on that, the
The-
core idea.
The core idea comes from his famous story about the Persian farmer, Ali Hafed, who heard about diamonds being discovered elsewhere, sold his prosperous farm, and went searching the world for diamonds, only to die poor and destitute.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile, the man who bought Ali Hafed's farm one day noticed a curious stone in the stream running through the property. That stone turned out to be a huge diamond. The farm was located on top of the legendary Golconda diamond mines.
the acres of diamonds were right there under his feet the whole time.
Exactly. And Conwell's takeaway, which he hammered home relentlessly, was that the wealth, the opportunity, the success you seek is almost always right where you currently are. In your own community, your own city, your own backyard.
You don't need to chase rainbows in distant lands.
Yeah. No. You need to open your eyes and identify the unmet needs, the problems to be solved, the services required by the people right around you, and then find an honest, diligent way to supply that need.
It's a profound lesson about perception, about overcoming what you might call proximity blindness. We often overlook the opportunities closest to us.
We do. Conwell basically says if you haven't found your acres of diamonds where you are, it's likely because you haven't looked hard enough or haven't figured out what unique value you can provide to the people nearby.
So mastering character and principles needs to be paired with this kind of clear-eyed perception of the opportunities that are often hidden in plain sight. All right, so we've established the inner game mindset and goals. We've covered the character, ethic, integrity, and balance. Now, once that foundation is solid, once the goose is healthy, so to speak.
Then the next stage in this mastery blueprint involves acquiring and refining the external tools you need to actually influence the world and, well, generate those golden eggs.
And historically, arguably the master tool for influence has always been rhetoric, the art of persuasion.
Absolutely. Quintilian, the great Roman educator and orator, gives us a good starting point. He reminds us that skill in speaking isn't just innate talent. It's perfected by a combination of three things: nature, your inherent abilities; art, learning the principles and techniques; and practice, honing the skill through repetition.
It's a blend: nature, art, practice. And Quintilian also synthesized what the best thinkers considered the essential aims of any effective orator.
Yes, he lists the three aims that are still incredibly relevant today. The speaker must, number one, instruct. That means clearly teaching the facts, informing the audience.
Okay, instruct. What's number two?
Number two is to move. This is about stirring the audience's emotions, engaging their will, motivating them to feel or act differently.
And the third aim?
The third is to charm. This means winning the audience's favor, holding their attention, making the message appealing and engaging. You need all three for complete persuasion.
Cicero, another giant of Roman oratory, used a really vivid analogy to describe powerful eloquence, didn't he?
He did, a beautiful one. He said oratory is like a river. The current, the force, is far stronger when it flows deep, within well-defined banks, like a mighty flood.
Then when the waters are shallow, scattered, broken up by little pebbles that get in the way.
Exactly. True eloquence needs depth, volume, focus, momentum. It needs to feel almost irresistible, carrying the audience along.
But the very power of rhetoric, its ability to sway people, has always made it controversial. Plato famously tackled this in his dialogue, the Gorgias.
Yes, through the character of Socrates. And this is a really crucial philosophical distinction we should probably spend a moment on. Socrates argues that rhetoric, or oratory, as practiced by many in his day, isn't actually a true art, a techne in Greek.
Okay, so if it's not a true art, what did Socrates call it? What was his critique?
He dismissed it as a mere knack and imperia. Think of it like a rule of thumb or practical skill picked up through experience, but without any underlying rational theory or understanding of principles.
And its main goal is just...
Its main goal, according to Socrates' critique, is simply to produce gratification, to satisfy immediate desires, to please the audience, rather than aiming for what is genuinely good or true.
He contrasts it with a true art, like medicine.
Exactly. A true techne, like medicine, can give a rational account, a logos of its procedures. A doctor can explain why a treatment works and how it contributes to the higher good of health.
Whereas someone with just a knack, like a cook.
A cook might have a knack for making food that pleases people's palates, gives gratification, but they can't necessarily give a rational account of why that food is fundamentally good for the body or connect it to the principles of nutrition. In fact, it might even be unhealthy.
So applying this to rhetoric, Socrates' deep criticism was that oratory teaches you how to sound convincing on important matters like justice, morality, right and wrong.
Without requiring the speaker to actually possess any real knowledge or understanding of those subjects, you can appear wise and virtuous without actually being wise and virtuous.
Which brings us right back around to Covey's point about primary versus secondary greatness, doesn't it? The danger of technique without character.
Precisely. For Plato, the orator who merely possesses the knack, the persuasive skill, but lacks true knowledge and virtuous character, is a potential danger to society, a manipulator leading people astray.
But even Aristotle, who took a more practical, analytical approach to rhetoric than Plato,
Yeah.
even he recognized the importance of character, didn't he?
Absolutely. While Aristotle meticulously cataloged the logical tools of persuasion, the enthymemes, the examples he explicitly stated that the speaker's perceived character, ethos, is arguably the most potent means of persuasion.
More potent than logic alone.
Often, yes.
Hmm.
He argued that it's more fitting and ultimately more persuasive for a decent person to show themselves as honest and trustworthy through their speech than it is for their logical argument to be mathematically precise but delivered by someone suspect. Credibility is paramount.
So how did Aristotle advise speakers to actually structure their arguments to be persuasive, balancing logic and other appeals? He talked about examples versus enthymemes.
Right. We should probably clarify enthymeme quickly, as it's a technical term. It's essentially a rhetorical syllogism, a form of deductive argument.
But different from a strict logical syllogism.
Yes. Unlike a scientific syllogism that starts from known, certain truths, an enthymeme usually starts from probabilities, signs, or beliefs that the specific audience already accepts. And often, one of the premises, or even the conclusion, is left unstated because the speaker assumes the audience will mentally fill it in.
It's logic adapted for a real-world, often impatient audience.
Exactly. Now, Aristotle suggested that examples, things like historical anecdotes, comparisons, fables, are particularly effective in deliberative speeches, where you're trying to persuade people about a future course of action.
But what about their general placement in an argument?
Generally, he felt examples work best as confirmation or illustration, after you've laid out the logical core of your argument using enthymemes. If you rely only on examples, you usually need a whole string of them to be convincing, which can, well, break up the flow of that powerful river Cicero talked about.
Okay, so mastering these tools of influence, rhetoric, logic, understanding audience psychology is crucial. But there's a danger of becoming just a skilled talker, disconnected from action, isn't there?
A huge danger. And this is where someone like Theodore Roosevelt comes in, connecting rhetoric and influence back to character and action in the public sphere.
His call for the strenuous life.
Exactly. Roosevelt vehemently warned against the cloistered life, the life of mere theorizing or passive observation, which he believed saps the hardy virtues in a nation as it saps them in the individual.
So for Roosevelt, the persuasive speaker, the influential leader, must also be a person of action, a doer.
Absolutely. Mastery of self, development of character, proficiency in rhetoric. These must translate into tangible effort and contribution, into facing challenges head on. It's about public duty.
He acknowledged the value of material progress, didn't he? The people building industries and creating wealth.
He did. He said the nation owes a great debt to those who toil for material prosperity, the strong men who build the factories and railroads.
But there was a greater debt.
Yes, he argued an even greater debt is owed to those individuals who recognized other and even loftier duties, duties to the nation and duties to the race. People who use their influence and energy for more than just personal gain.
So it's about integrating everything. Your principle-centered character, your productive capability, honed skills, including rhetoric, should ultimately manifest not just in personal success, like Conwell might emphasize,
but also in contribution to the common good, in public service, in tackling the larger challenges. The skilled orator, the effective leader, must avoid what Roosevelt called the base spirit of greed that sees commercial success as the ultimate goal. Their rhetoric, their influence, needs to be fueled by those loftier motives.
Okay, so we've built this picture, the inner mindset, the character foundation, the external tools of influence. What's the final piece needed for this mastery blueprint to really work in the messy reality of life?
It seems to be about ongoing consciousness, the ability to adapt, especially to failure, and the willingness to practice self-correction. You can't just set it and forget it.
Exactly. And Les Brown offers a really practical, almost therapeutic tool for this, specifically aimed at boosting self-approval, which is vital for sustained effort. It involves radical self-correction.
What's the exercise he recommends?
He advises a kind of psychological clearing out. You literally sit down and write down everything that's been nagging at you, eating away at your self-worth over the years.
All the bad habits, the faults, the mistakes. All of them. Be specific. Times you hurt someone, maybe maligned a colleague, wasted a golden opportunity, times you sabotaged yourself. You have to face these things honestly, get them out of your head and onto paper.
That sounds potentially painful, but necessary.
Necessary, because the real power is in the next step. Once that brutally honest list is complete, you take the paper.
Right.
You tear it into shreds, rip it up completely, and as you do, you consciously forgive yourself for all of it. You let it go.
It's a symbolic act of release.
A very powerful one. The idea is to clear the path forward to your dreams by refusing to let past failures or mistakes keep you mentally chained. You draw a line.
Because, as the sources suggest, that inner fire, those dreams, they don't just disappear, but guilt and self-recrimination can smother them.
Absolutely. If you're constantly looking backward, trapped in regret, you simply don't have the mental or emotional energy needed for that intense 30-day experiment focus, or for maintaining the PPC balance. You're draining your own battery.
So this act of self-forgiveness is crucial, but it has to be paired with something else, doesn't it? It's not just letting yourself off the hook.
No, it must be immediately followed by radical self-responsibility, taking ownership.
This is where Les Brown pushes us to adopt that proactive stance, right? That declaration. I got myself into this, I can get myself out of it.
Yes, and crucially, I am not going to be a volunteer victim. That phrase is key. It's the mental shift away from blaming circumstances or other people and towards focused action based on what you can control.
That commitment to self-responsibility and managing your internal response to external events, that feels like the absolute cornerstone of Stoicism.
It really is. The Stoics, both ancient and modern proponents drawing on them, provide arguably the ultimate framework for this kind of adaptation and resilience.
They constantly stress that distinction between what we can control and what we can't.
Exactly. You can manage your perceptions, you can direct your own actions and choices, but the world around you, external events, other people's behavior, outcomes, these are ultimately beyond your complete control.
Which means we can't become emotionally dependent on things going our way. We can't be addicted to either success or failure defining us.
Precisely. The fundamental Stoic rule for navigating life is something like not to give in to adversity, not to trust prosperity. Maintain your character, your purpose, your inner equilibrium, regardless of external circumstances.
And the obstacle itself. How should we view challenges and setbacks?
The obstacle is not just something to be endured, it's something to be used. Ryan Holiday, popularizing Stoic ideas, talks about the obstacle being the way it's raw material. The Stoics saw obstacles as opportunities to practice virtue, to become stronger.
Use it as a catapult, as one source puts it.
Yes, even if you perceive things clearly, act rightly, and have good intentions, things can still go wrong. Failure happens. The Stoic response isn't despair. It's to immediately analyze the failure, learn from it, and use that knowledge, that strength and resilience, the obstacle itself, to launch yourself forward more effectively next time.
That whole process, facing adversity, taking responsibility, using setbacks as fuel for growth, brings us to perhaps the most powerful real-world example in all our sources, the transformation of Malcolm X.
His story is an almost unbelievable illustration of this entire blueprint in action, particularly his journey while incarcerated. It's a testament to the sheer force of human personality to turn the bleakest adversity into profound self-education and mastery.
Where did that transformation begin? He was known as Satan in prison at one point, wasn't he? Completely adrift.
He was illiterate in any meaningful sense, deeply cynical and angry. The turning point, according to his autobiography, came from a challenge by a fellow inmate, an older, self-educated man named Bimby.
What did Bimby say?
Bimby basically told him bluntly that he wasn't stupid, that he had brains, and that he was wasting them. He challenged Malcolm's ignorance and lack of direction.
That sounds like one of those moments Frank will talk about life questioning you. An external perspective igniting internal responsibility.
Exactly that. It was a critical spark. Malcolm, instead of reacting defensively, was intrigued. He sought out Bimby's mentorship and took his advice to heart. He decided to educate himself.
And this wasn't just casual reading. He undertook a really arduous process.
Incredibly arduous. He started with the basics. literally teaching himself to read and write more effectively by painstakingly copying the entire dictionary word by word, page by page.
The sheer discipline involved in that.
It's staggering. And he didn't stop there. He devoured books in the prison library, engaged in debates, took correspondence courses in English and even Latin.
Talk about investing in your PC, your production capability. He was rebuilding his entire intellectual foundation from scratch.
Completely. He was forging the tools he would later use with such devastating effect. He was ensuring that when he eventually had the platform to speak, his rhetoric wouldn't be shallow, it would have that depth, that volume, that Ciceronian momentum, because it was built on a foundation of intense self-study and hard-won knowledge.
He transformed himself through sheer will and discipline within the confines of prison, from someone largely illiterate to one of the most powerful orators of his time.
His autobiography really stands as this incredible testament to, as the source notes, the power of redemption and the force of human personality. It proves that the path to mastery, driven by principle and proactive responsibility, can be undertaken even from the most seemingly hopeless starting points. #outro.
So as we pull all these threads together from ancient Rome, Stoic philosophy, 19th century lectures, modern psychology, and self-help, what's the core takeaway? What's the singular truth that emerges about this blueprint for mastery?
I think it's this. True, sustainable effectiveness is never really about the flashy techniques first. It's fundamentally about a hierarchy, an order of development.
You have to start with the inner game.
Absolutely. Master your focus, choose worthy ideals, cultivate that internal control first.
Then comes character.
Then you must build that foundation of absolute integrity, the goose, the PC, grounding it in unchanging principles as Covey and the Stoics advise.
And only then.
Only then, once you have that internal stability and character foundation, can you effectively and ethically deploy the external tools, the rhetoric, the persuasion skills, the golden eggs of P, in a way that builds trust and achieves lasting results?
So the mastery we've been exploring, described across all these different contexts and centuries, it's ultimately about the mastery of self.
Yes, achieved through discipline, clear goals, constant learning, adaptation, and above all, an unwavering commitment to character that dictates how you respond to the world, not just how you try to manipulate it.
It's a lifelong process, not a destination.
Definitely. And maybe the best way to close this deep dive is with a really profound, slightly mind-bending thought from Viktor Frankl. It perfectly captures that idea of ongoing self-review, responsibility, and learning from potential failure.
Little thought.
Frankl suggests we should try to live as if we were living already for the second time.
Okay.
And as if we had acted wrongly the first time.
Oh, wow. Live as if this is your second chance and you already messed up the first one.
Exactly. So the provocative question for you, the listener, is this. If you genuinely adopted that mindset right now, knowing this was your second fully conscious attempt at today, which specific daily actions, which conversations, which choices, which missed opportunities would you immediately change?
That really forces you to evaluate your current actions against your own highest principles and goals.
It's perhaps the ultimate test of living that principle-centered, conscious, and responsible life that leads to mastery.